Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Grand Traverse County Public Safety Committee to order. First order of business is the approval of the regular minutes of September 1st.
So moved.
Support. Motion by Fleece, second by Stepka. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to amend the agenda if we could.
Okay.
What I'd like to add is to have a discussion on the mobile data system replacement with the board here this morning.
Okay, we'll put that under other business. Is there anyone else wishing to amend the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move forward with public comment. Anyone in the audience wishing to make public comment at this time? There'll be another opportunity toward the end of the meeting. Seeing none, moving forward. Grand Traverse Sheriff's Office. Under Sheriff Alger is going to talk about surplus vehicles.
Good morning, I'm Nate Alger, I work for the Sheriff's Office. First order of business is the request on our part, as we typically do, to declare some vehicles surplus. There's listed 4 vehicles for you. These vehicles are 2002 and 2003, a mix of Impalas and Crown Victorias. Each of these vehicles have in excess of 140,000 miles and are in some state of disrepair that would cost what we believe to be more money than the vehicle is worth to us. So we would like to declare these 4 vehicles surplus and auction them as we do typically.
So moved per the Undersheriff's request.
Support.
Motion by Fleece, supported by Hooper, to move forward with the public auction of these 4 vehicles. Any other discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Carries. Next item.
The second item on the agenda is the State Criminal Alien Assistance Program, also known as the SCAP Award. This is money provided to us by the government to house illegal aliens, and they have given us the amount of $705 this year. This is in addition to what we have already received. We are requesting to receive this award.
Is it 755 or 705?
755.
755 is what it's listed here.
Okay.
And you stated you already received money from them?
Yes.
Okay, I was going to say, that doesn't seem like very much money for what must...
No, this is in addition. They have a
Okay.
formula that they use, and for whatever reason, when they reviewed their formula this year, they recognized that we were allotted more money than what we were given. So this is in addition to.
Oh, okay. Well, motion to approve the award of $755 for the Grand Traverse Sheriff Department.
Support. Motion by Hooper, supported by Stepka, to accept the SCAP Award. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Do you have anything else?
Anything for us? Thank you very much.
Do anyone have anything else for the Undersheriff?
Nope.
Thank you, sir. IT. It's an unusual place to see you, Don.
Good morning, Don Sheehan, the Director of Information Technology Systems. This morning we're coming back. We went through a RFP process for a new public safety system, and that included the records management, the jail system, mobile, mugshots. Also included electronic ticketing and computer-aided dispatch. We were looking at all areas, and I was here in May just asking for permission to go out for proposal. So we got those out in July, and so we did send them out. 8 responses were received by the August 27th deadline, and we had a core team from the Central Dispatch, Sheriff's Department, the jail, city, all take a look at those proposals. And when they came back, New World Systems, who is our current vendor, ended up getting the top ranking. And we also had OSSI, who is the second one, came out in the ranking. We talked about it as a team after we looked at the rankings and what everybody felt. The team thought unanimously to look at New World Systems, mainly because of the cost factor involved there, that we already have their newer version of the Windows for the computer-aided dispatch and mobile. So we don't have to buy those again if we stay with New World Systems. So there's about a $250,000 price difference between New World Systems and OSSI. There's also an ongoing maintenance cost that's substantially higher with OSSI. I mean, I'm okay with us only looking at one vendor too. I mean, we all sat there and said it's going to be really hard to justify that additional difference in cost. But at the same time, we're also only going to be looking, our recommendation is to go back and look at one vendor and not look at the others unless we're not happy with what we see when we go to, and what we'd like to do is do some on-site visits and see what we think of the system. So we're not actually asking for approval for the system now, we're asking for approval to continue moving forward and do further investigation. And we also have to confirm the pricing, verify that there's no surprises in there, that the licensing is all accurate, check the references, and also kind of review the data conversion plan, which hopefully New World would have the advantage on that also because we have their older system. They designed that system. If we move to a new vendor, they're going to have to kind of help us figure out where all the data is at. And maybe they've done New World conversions in the past. We would have to ask that question. So I guess with that, if there's questions.
Don, I guess I have a couple. One talks about the annual maintenance costs, and then there's a note additional $12,000 per year for 24/7 maintenance. We currently have a maintenance contract for our system. How much different is this than our annual maintenance contract that we have?
If we stay with New World Systems, they're willing to make the first year match what we're currently paying. So I had that.
57,580.
57.
Yes, is what we're, so that would be our first year. But you would have to add the 12,000 on there. I don't believe we are paying for the 24/7 right now. When we sent out the proposal, though, that is what we asked everybody to price in there. And I don't know whether they would modularize that too. I mean, the jail or records, we might say, we don't really need it for dispatch. Yes, we do. So we might be able.
shaking her head that we are paying for the 24/7.
Okay, I'm not sure we are on the record side then.
Oh,
You're paying
probably
that
not
for
on
the
the
CAD.
record side.
Yeah,
Okay.
Jason is paying that separately right now for the CAD system.
Okay.
Last week, we did a meeting with RCC and talking about regional dispatching. And one of the things that was stressed was in order to virtually combine, if you will, the adjacent counties or otherwise, we need to have compatible systems for the CADs. Do you know if this is compatible to anyone else's or no, it's not? Jamel's holding her hand up, I can tell.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, I know that Leelanau County is not using New World Systems.
Right, they went OSSI.
Yeah, and I know up in the Charlevoix.
Near it.
Come up, Jamel, please. Bring a chair.
Just briefly, Jamel Anderson, the 911 director. In the meeting that we had for the regional, and we talked about CAD because Leelanau was indicating there was a portion of theirs they were looking to replace, and that was the records part. And Jason and I talked about it, and after we see what you want to do with this process, we're going to get a hold of their IT person and Tom Skoronsky and let them know where we're at with this and see if we can work with them and if possibly we can work this into the regional, and getting funding from the regional project. And I'm not sure where they're at with being willing to replace their whole system or, or just that part of it, but that was the next step.
All right, appreciate that. Just the idea that we can interface between the adjacent counties will give us a lot of flexibility if we end up going to a point of, what the discussion was, for those of you that weren't there, was instead of trying to build a regional dispatch center, just have the capabilities with the technology that dispatch, if there's a problem in Leelanau County, a dispatcher in Grand Traverse County can step up and help them take care of their dispatching. So, those things made a lot of sense. What's your request? Pleasures?
Yeah, I was only going to comment there too. If you do have a centralized CAD operation, I don't know if that was the plan. This system is a multi-jurisdictional, so you could pick up other counties, add them in. They may want additional licensing to make that happen, but you could use this system to do all of that. The question then would be pushing the data back down into their records or their other systems.
Okay. Dennis?
No.
Oops, I'm sorry, Larry?
I would move that we approve their request to further examine New World System public safety application.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll support.
Motion by Fleece, supported by Hooper. Further discussion. Dennis?
Yeah, Don, talk for just a minute about why the low bidder was not considered or was not in the final two, just so we have it on the record.
Okay. And the low bid, I mean, basically, well, one of those was a partial bid for
Right.
electronic ticketing only.
Right.
So, and actually, that same vendor is a part of the New World Systems bid. They went with them for electronic ticketing.
Okay.
So I guess our lowest, the Sleuth Software, they came out, in, I think, fourth in the overall rankings. And I think the committee, when we started looking, I mean, we would have to bypass the third one in the rankings also. But, I mean, everybody had kind of their own opinion. Everybody looked through all of them. But I think the biggest thing is that they felt there were more modifications that we would have to do. I think they only have one location in Michigan right now. So many of the state reporting options are not there. They will have to create those options in order to comply with Michigan state reporting. And part of our thing, I think, when we're looking at it, quite a few of them said, hey, we plan to be able to do this in the next year or two. We're going to be doing this. You know, we wanted to base it on what they have now and not something that they say they're going to have at a later point. But I think the biggest reason we went through and we just rated those, and if they were missing too many pieces, we really didn't want to come back and make that recommendation. We were trying to look at that fully integrated system.
With Pro Phoenix, versus New World, what was the major difference there?
You can ask the rest of the group too. They have a lot of their pieces. They're not in Michigan either. And so they look like they're a very progressive company. To me, it's just not a complete product at this point in time. I think they have an excellent CAD system from what we could see. The records in the jail are where they were missing pieces, and also that state reporting and some of the interfaces aren't there. Like they have a jail commissary system. Other ones have that linkage to be able to push information directly into it. Those all have to be created under their system at this point.
Thank you.
So there's going to be site visits now and further research into kind of how the system is working other places.
Right.
That's the next step. I support this recommendation. I think it makes sense, and I know everybody has a comfort level with the idea of New World System being in here, and the transfer of data will be much easier, and so I think that makes good sense. I want to caution the board, I guess, or the committee, that I expect we're going to get some correspondence from the city sometime here in the near future. There's been some discussions between the mayor and the chairman and others, and the city seems at least concerned with the arrangement for paying for central records. And it's been part of discussion that I was involved in a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know where that's going to go, but I just, I think we have to be aware of the fact that we don't have a commitment from the city to pay their portion of this at this point in time, or at least I could see it going away from that. So I just got to point that out. Now, that's down the road when we get into this whole financial thing, but I anticipate we'll be seeing letters from the city here soon requesting consideration for not being charged for central records. So,
Dennis, don't we have a commitment from the city to extend some grant money that they had received toward the upgrade?
yeah, I think we do.
Yeah, and I think those are two separate, Brian Hefner, Traverse City Police, I think those are two separate issues. I know the city and county are looking at the central records as a department, but as far as this project is concerned, the city's portion is funded through a Homeland Security, or a stimulus grant that we've received and has been spelled out as our commitment to this project. That grant's been awarded, so the perceived city's portion is already set aside for us by the government.
Brian, do you know, though, that has Dean done the calculations to determine that the amount that you got in your grant is equivalent to what percentage of the cost of the project you would have? Because that's not my understanding from talking to Dean.
We're waiting for this to come in, and New World is close to where we're at. It's my understanding that there has to be some confirmation as far as number of licenses that New World's going to require and some costing issues.
Okay,
But I anticipate that we're going to be real close with the grant money we've received.
okay.
And that grant is separate from the Byrne Memorial Grant that was in earlier? Because
It's the same grant.
Okay. So, because there's 81,000 total in that, between the city and county?
Actually, the county received a second one they're putting towards this project.
Yes.
To speak for the undersheriff,
Okay.
that's about 90,000 and ours was about 30,000.
Do we have roughly $120,000 then of grant money toward
I don't remember
purchase
the
of
number, but
this?
it's somewhere in that area, yep. Yeah, Dean did some calculations. We figure that, we assume that we're going to need around around $650,000 when all is said and done in the first year, is what we're estimating.
Further discussion? We have a motion on the floor to move forward with the on-site investigations of New World Systems. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just want to thank the group that worked on this. I'm going to tell you, I was here the first day that the bids came in, and they literally came in on 3 carts that are the size of that table. I mean, it probably stacked up, 3, 4, 5 feet high, and they read through every one of those, the team did, and then evaluated them and met on numerous occasions. So thank you all for all the work that you did on that. That was really a lot of work.
Well, and one thing you had suggested possibly is whether a commissioner would want to participate at this point in the process
Yeah.
of seeing the on-site visits and see what the systems do.
We wanted to offer that to you and see if there was a commissioner that wanted to do the on-site visits and kind of join the team. That's what we did with Herb Lemkel, if you recall, when we put in the health system. And what it did is it really gave the commission a level of confidence with a county commissioner being there to say, this really looks like it's good for the team and it's going to work for our departments. And so that's something we just wanted to offer. If the committee or the board wants to appoint someone or someone's interested in participating, the group would welcome that.
I guess, Don, what I would ask is if you get a tentative list of dates that you're going to do visits, if you can get them to Dennis, he can get them to one of us, and we'll see if we can do that.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
I
Thank you.
think it would be absolutely of value for one of us to attend. I certainly can't commit times and dates right now without having some idea when they are.
Well, and one site we're considering is in Indiana, since they have everything that New World has to offer.
Where in Indiana?
Where's that?
Okay.
Which county?
Hamilton.
Okay, so you're not going to visit the company, you're going to visit what they've set up somewhere else? Okay.
Right, yeah. Actually go see
That's
and
what
see
it
how
says.
these work.
Well, yeah, and talk to the people. That's what we've done when we did dispatch stuff in the past. You go there and you physically see what they've done and
Other places.
Talk to
whether
the
it's
sheriff
working, talk to the-
deputies, talk to the
Talk to all
staff.
the fire departments, talk to the police departments, talk to, the dispatchers and see how it works.
And just also, when we get into this, there will be, I would expect that there would be some level of negotiation that takes place. For example, for one thing, I'm going to certainly ask Don to explore the idea of paying this over time so we can have a comparison of the cost benefit of doing that versus buying it all up front. And there may be things that they get into when they start looking at the component pieces that we can either not have to do, or, we may find we have to add something, when they really get into the nitty-gritty. So just, that's a rough number, and just keep that in mind. There'll be some negotiation that takes place.
So, just to be clear now, the $698,655 is the first payment, is buy it?
That's
And
to buy it.
Then it's maintenance after that?
Yep, yeah, and
Okay,
it's pretty
so it's just a
pricey
one-time
maintenance.
payment of
Yeah.
600.
Yeah, but it replaces other maintenance, so.
Right. Well, and another thing is if I cut Don right, he talked about the commissary thing. We currently have a contract to provide the commissary services. Maybe that can be eliminated,
Actually,
With
this
this.
provides an interface into that system.
into that system.
So it'll replace Mugshot, but the commissary stays.
But whether or not we still pay both contracts is the question.
It doesn't provide a commissary
Okay.
component.
Just has the interface.
It probably could. Could it, do they have a commissary component if we wanted to get to that?
I'd have to ask and see.
Yeah, okay. So, it just interfaces and it's just it lets them talk.
Well, have the systems talking to each other would be a good thing. Next order of business, I believe, is the
Thank you all.
Carlin Tower. This is an awful short tower coming up now.
Yeah.
This is a new contract for the radio tower, which is on a private property. The contract was 20 years old and expired and had to be redone. Bob Cooney helped with that process and has approved basically the contract that we have here, and so has the gentleman the contract is for. And basically, you have all the information in front of you, $250 a year, and then a one-time payment of $500 for the grant to purchase option. And this has been a process. It's been expired for almost a year, but we'd like to move ahead and get it taken care of.
So, I was just noticing, this is quite an extensive contract for such a small, $250 a year.
Talk to the lawyer guy.
I did catch I think a typo in reading this yesterday on page 3 of the lease agreement, paragraph 11B. It's written 10%, but then in parentheses, 40%. So in the final draft, we should clarify that
Okay.
issue.
Thank you for catching that.
I also noticed there's plenty of opportunities to leave it if you want, so
Right.
I'm comfortable with the amount of time it's involved.
Yeah, this gentleman, it's a family farm, and he just wants to make sure that if someone's working on the tower, there's problems, it's not going to be an issue for him, basically. So I will get that remedied on that paragraph, 11B.
If you're not familiar with this tower site, it's basically immediately adjacent to the parking lot at Grant Township Hall.
Okay.
So it's, it's right there, if we have to do anything.
Is he leasing it to other entities? No, just the...
No, it's a little tower.
Yeah.
What was the previous rent?
I think it was $1,000 for 20 years, and it was this gentleman's father who initially, it was he and his father that were identified on the original contract. His father since passed away, and I didn't actually, it was a one-time payment, so this was buried in records, and it's a good thing that he, was aware that the contract was there, and it was a 20-year contract. So it's an increase from from the $1,000 for 20 years, but don't think he's being unreasonable with.
And this is a 10-year contract?
How did this come to be built on private property? Anybody know that?
We needed a tower there, and I think that he was probably approached because it was his property. And that's my assumption. I was here 20 years ago, but not involved in this process. At that time, we were just trying to get towers where we needed coverage, and that was a good place at that point.
And if you do know, that Grant Township area, because of the topography down around the Carlin Hills and things, causes us a significant problem with radio coverage.
Mm-hmm.
So we did need the tower. Larry?
I would move that we authorize the necessary people to sign and implement the new Carlin radio tower contract with payment retroactive back to November 1st, 2008. And the duration of the contract would be for 10 years, expiring October 31st of 2018.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Support.
Motion by Fleece, supported by Hooper. Further discussion?
Just a quick question. Dennis, I note that the lease indicates that the memorandum of option of agreement and then memorandum of lease agreement should be filed with the Register of Deeds.
Mhm.
Who actually takes it upon themselves to do that? Do we-
Jamel will take
Okay.
care of that in consultation with Bob Cooney.
Okay. Larry mentioned, too, that it was or asked if it was a 10-year lease. I noticed that it automatically renews in 5-year increments for three successive.
Unless notice is given.
Pardon me?
Unless notice is given.
Correct. So, I'd support that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Thank you.
You have another little tower.
I'm going to stay here for your added thing.
Yep.
I'm going to stay here for your,
Why don't you stick around, Jamel?
Yeah, we will.
Well, there may be public comment, so get out of the seat.
We now come to our second opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to have public comment at this time?
Chris Maxbauer. Dennis, you might want to consider asking the city commission if they might want to send a city commissioner as well as a county commissioner down to view the software. It might, support buy-in from the city.
It's a good idea.
Anyone else wishing to comment at this time? That brings us to the building site for equipment storage update. I believe the undersheriff's talking about this one.
Good morning again, Nate Alger, Sheriff's Office. At our last meeting, referenced the storage building. It was asked that we try to elicit from the public if there was any nearby properties available that were vacant. We did that through a posting in the Record Eagle, and we did not receive any requests or any bids, anything of that nature, any indication that anybody is willing or has property available nearby to the station. And the owner of the property that we've identified as a potential piece to purchase has been out of the country since the meeting, so the sheriff has not been able to coordinate with him in terms of any type of purchase agreement. So I think we, from the sheriff's office perspective, we are ready and willing to move that direction. We're looking for a purchase, I'm speaking of, at the parcel we identified previously, and we would like to do that and ask the board's pleasure to that effect.
Dennis?
Nate, do you happen to know what the sheriff's position is on the letter that the county board sent to him regarding, excuse me, getting a comprehensive list of items that he would like to use the ICE money for? Because I don't know, but I anticipate the possibility that before the county board authorizes purchase of this, they may want to see that list of everything. Do you know what his position is on that?
I don't know what his position is on it. He has been soliciting from the division commanders as well as the officers their prioritization list, and he is accumulating those. I know that we have a general idea of what the priority is going to be, and we will have that list composed for the Board of Commissioners. He doesn't want it to be his priority. He wants it to be the department's priority, and that's taking some time. We have everything from the storage building to, you name it, across the board, tasers, digital dictation, new things that the deputies want. So we're compiling that list, and we will be preparing a list for the Board of Commissioners. I will tell you at the top of that list is a storage facility, and that's across the divisions per the administration. We need that building, so you'll see that on the top of the list.
Thanks, Nate.
Well, I'm not sure that, I think I'm more than willing to speak for at least myself that I'd like to move forward with this, but I'm not going to authorize any expenditure or, any purchase until I see dollar amounts.
Okay. The property for sale, and I believe was 70. If I'm not mistaken, it was 70,000, and we were going to try to negotiate with the owner of that property to see if it could come down.
So the plan here would be get the property and then go out on bids for a building.
Yes, and that's the second point I would like to clarify is what would the board's pleasure be to that effect if we did purchase this building? Are we going to have a design build kind of concept, or are we going to hire an engineer to actually work our way through the process with Danny Brown? And I don't know. We've had some discussions about both directions, and I believe that there may be public in the administrative office section of this building. It's going to be a marine or a recreational division section. Our snowmobile ORV patrol and marine patrol will be housed out there, so it is possible that public would be going to that office. That may up the standards slightly for that building. So we're looking for the board's pleasure on that.
Yeah. What, I'm sorry?
Wouldn't Wouldn't it be prudent for them to perhaps first meet with Bruce Remay and Danny Brown?
Yeah.
And see if, because you guys will obviously have in mind what you want, and then, meet with them, and maybe they can procure it all within the county, I don't know. But I think that'd be the first step, check with them too, and they could certainly send you on the direction.
Yeah, I'd be glad to set that up if Nate wants to do it. My preference would be, I would like Danny involved in the construction of this building, the way he is in all of our other buildings. So I think a meeting like that, Nate, with us, Danny and Bruce would get us started.
Okay.
And this is all going to be financed through the seizure money so far? Is that what we're looking at?
The seizure money this is the number one priority for that seizure money at this point. And, if you're asking me if that's the sheriff's intention, I believe it is.
Well, I support that because, as he pointed out, that then this money doesn't go away, it actually might appreciate. I mean, after you hold on to it for a while and find another location, which is the plan, as far as I know.
That is the plan.
And then the money will still be available for future use.
That is correct.
Rather than spending on depreciable items, which I don't really find is a good idea.
I would hope to have, by the end of the month, I would hope to have a request in front of the board to purchase this property. I don't know when we can start construction, if it's even feasible to begin construction this year or early next year, but there is a timeline for the bulk of this money. And, whether or not the government will hold us to that or not, it's unknown. And I think we need to get some of this, the money was intended to be spent, it needs to be spent.
I agree with that, but I have to believe if there's a contract in place to construct,
Construction's under.
they're not gonna stop us from doing that.
Yeah, and I would hope you're right. When I tried to pin the IRS folks down on that, they just wouldn't commit to that.
Have you ever been able to pin IRS folks down?
I wish I could.
Like that?
No, but they've pinned me down a couple times. Dennis, is it appropriate for this committee to take action authorizing the sheriff and the undersheriff to negotiate the purchase of this property and bring it back to the full board, or how would you like to have that?
Well, I'd like to see something put together that kind of shows that, they should do some kind of a document for you and for the public that shows, and I know there's been a great effort, but there should be something that shows the effort that they've gone through so that we can demonstrate to the public that it's been open, that there have been other options considered, and then their recommendation back to you. And I think that should come to you like at Ways and Means meeting or at the board meeting. And,
And I think most of that's available because the sheriff presented us like 17 buildings and 21 parcels of property.
He went
looked
through
at.
a very comprehensive review with me of each building with pictures, each property, so they have all that information. And, I was thinking about it, while the board unanimously passed that motion to send a letter to the sheriff, which was done, saying we want to see all the requests, so we have some idea. I don't know what the board's feeling is on this, but if the board's feeling is clear that you're going to build a facility, a storage facility, and again, I don't know that that's the feeling of the board, but if it is, I do not have a problem, if that's your intention, with moving that piece ahead and then seeing everything else in a comprehensive list. But that's a decision that you have to make. Now, if there are commissioners who feel strongly that, hey, we're not convinced that we need a storage building, I want to see the whole list, well, then I think you might not be, you won't be ready probably by the end of the month to give the okay on purchasing this property. That's a discussion you have to have with other commissioners, I think. But I'd be comfortable with it.
You set?
I am set. Any questions of me?
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you, Nate.
And we're going to have a meeting this afternoon, right?
Yes, we are.
Take your gun off when you come in, okay?
Just the one that you can see, the other one he's bringing with him.
Half the time, I never see him when he, with the gun on, except when he's meeting with me. And he's always got the gun on when he meets with me.
You can probably feel fairly safe, Dennis. I think the sheriff's only issued him one bullet, so.
That's all he needs. Economic cutbacks, we're only issuing under sheriff one
I'm
bullet.
always glad to meet with Nate. I always look forward to those opportunities. He's great to
All
work with.
right, ending this foolishness. Commissioner Fleece has asked to add the MDT system replacement
Or, you want
to
to
our
go
discussion this morning.
And you can use
if
two
Jason
chairs.
and Jamel can come up. As some of you may remember, during the budget process, we had some discussion with Jamel about upgrading the, I guess I'm going to call it an air card for other purposes, to allow the mobile data terminals to operate off a satellite link instead of their cell phones. And I think the estimated number was $28,000. So,
Why don't you two introduce yourself?
It's $29,850 was the total, and just to clarify, it's the application that manages the data that travels over the wireless network currently. It allows for AirCard to be utilized, but currently it's going to manage our current infrastructure, which is an RF system. Runs over our data radio. It's just replacing that data application.
But it allows for the use of air cards. It supports that, but that's a separate component.
Introduce yourselves.
I'm sorry,
Please.
Jamel Anderson, Director of 911.
Jason Torrey, Central Dispatch.
All right, so based on what I just heard, this puts the infrastructure, updates the infrastructure, basically.
Right.
Okay. But if we want to get to that 3 meg speed or whatever, are you telling me that we're going to be incurring other costs in all our departments to do that?
Those would be other costs, but like I said, it still manages what we currently have in place, and it has the ability to manage both networks at once. So if one department decided they wanted to put a handful of air cards into their MDT infrastructure and their deployment, they could do that. I know the Sheriff's Office has special interest because they have a Fife Lake car, for instance, a Long Lake Township car, where the RF doesn't reach out to them. It's only broadcast from one central location. We did test the air cards to see what benefit it would give them, and it gives them excellent coverage in those areas. So
Jason, just so we have some kind of idea, do you have any idea what's it costs for an air card? I have no idea.
I think the current proposed monthly fee was like $41,
Okay. Okay.
non-negotiated.
Okay.
And this is coming out of this current budget, isn't it? Or is it proposed for 2010?
Well, we have to decide that. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
the thing that we obviously talked about at the budget meeting was that, or maybe it was at Ways and Means, Dean had reported that it looked like the surcharge revenue was coming in above what our estimate was. And so I was hopeful, and I think Jamel had talked, or was there when we talked about this, I was hopeful that Dean would be able to identify that that money's available as excess revenue in this budget, and then that could be used and we could buy this immediately as opposed to waiting till next year or looking at the capital budget. You know, and I'm supportive of that, you know, just as I always do, I caution, you know, that every time we see that we have extra revenue and we spend it this year, that reduces down the year-end, you know, whether we have a positive or a negative fund balance, of course. But in this case, it was pretty clear that commissioners felt that this was necessary and the staff feels it's necessary. And if we can identify those excess revenues, I have no problem with moving it forward. I have not talked to Dean about this year's revenues. And if you decide you want to move this forward, what I would do is I'd ask Dean to identify that with Jamel and Jason for Ways and Means. And then, you know, would be in a position to do something with it if you wanted.
Just for clarification, that the piece we're looking to purchase is the infrastructure part. The air cards, as we said, are a separate component, and departments would be responsible for that option should they choose to use that. The city, for instance, probably would not, because they get the coverage they need within the city. A lot of the county is fine, but there are those few instances when it could be very beneficial, but that would be up to the departments whether they wanted to enhance their service with the
But
air
even
card.
if nobody buys air cards,
We
it's
still
an
need
upgrade
those.
of our system, and that's what we
Bottom
need.
line is, right, Dennis, the current software that we have is obsolete. There's no more licensing being issued for this software, so there's no more upgrades being done, there's no more growth, period. It needs to be replaced, it's obsolete, and if something happened to it today, they say they support it, but the guy who I talked to says, I support that product, was kind of shaky on his knowledge of what, they're totally moving away from the PADCOM.
Yeah, that happens all the time. So Nate, it's unlikely, I know, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but it's probably not likely that we'd be looking at 50 cars with air cards
Well,
immediately.
again, Nate Elger, we are talking and have been talking to Jason and Jamel about this and the movement towards those cards versus the modems. We can't do everything we want to do right now with the modems. It's kind of like fitting an orange to a straw is the analogy we use, but These cards, from my understanding, are going to expand our ability to do certain things that we want our cars to do. Now, we're still in the investigation stage of that, but right now we spend $3,000 to $4,000 on a modem to put in our cars.
One-time
One-time.
expense, yeah.
And that modem is good for a period of time until it breaks.
Sure,
And then
okay.
these cards are about $550 a month or for a year per user, and that's about $25,000 a year across 50 cards. So we're looking at our options there as well, but one thing that we're going to get away from is the use of the modems and the cost of those modems. So there's
Okay.
going to be a change in, but these cards, we need these cards to do the things we want to do. We want to review reports in the cars. We can't do that right now because it takes too much space. Mapping in the cars is out of the question right now because you can't fit it through the modem. It's too slow.
Yeah, what's important, the key here for this discussion is that the board be aware that this is a $29,000 expense. But potentially, there's additional expenses. You know, you like to see the whole picture. There's additional expenses down the road that'll be an ongoing annual operating expense, or there'll be at least a request for that in the future. You just need to be aware of it.
That's correct.
I know, living in one of those areas that has a lot of dead spots and radio spots, you know, it's tough to deal with radio communications and cell phones in some of these areas. I talked to Charlie Jutter the other day. He tried the air card out in Grant Township, and he said in the time he carried it, he only had one time that he broke service, you know, which is considerably better. He won't even try to use his MDT out there on the way it is currently.
And there are several areas in the county like that. And to elaborate on the undersheriff's comments, the new public safety software you're looking at has the ability to do field-based reporting, e-ticketing, in-car mapping. All these are going to make the public safeties, all the public safety entities more efficient in their performance and how they carry out their day. But you can't operate that over the data radio network. This runs at about half the speed of a dial-up internet connection from your house, 33K. With the potential with the air card system, you have up to 1.5 meg, 2 meg download, 1 meg upload. So you currently have an in-house application in all the MDTs. This is a for instance. Where it accesses our current AS400 records management software, you can't utilize that on the RF. Deputy Jetter, as an example, he says he can pull that up like he's sitting at his desk off the air car system. Big benefit.
Your pleasure.
Well, I'm looking at some information that was provided to the board, the full board, I believe, on September 10th. And I believe after listening to the first presentation and today's presentation, this is something we absolutely have to do. But I noticed Grand Traverse County Central Dispatch Policy Board, I have a letter here signed by Chief Terry Flynn representing that board with most of the EMS personnel or emergency personnel in Grand Traverse County here. And then I have another sheet that shows the difference between total roam and net motion, what the current system does, what the requested system would do, and there's no comparison. So I would make a motion that we instruct staff to see if we can find the funding for this important endeavor in the amount of $29,850 and bring it back to us at Ways and Means.
I have a motion. Do I have support?
I'll support that.
I have a motion by Fleece, supported by Hooper. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. All you guys got to do is find the money.
I think I'll go see Dean.
We heard a rumor that the sheriff had some extra money.
The undersheriff won't let us talk to the sheriff.
I don't blame him. I wouldn't let you talk to him either. Is there any other business to come before this body this morning?
Can I make just one quick
Sure.
comment? The week before last, I attended a 3-day seminar sponsored by, I think, NIC, the National Institute of Corrections, with Nate Alger and Captain Hall on jail and corrections issues, and it was extremely informative. Chris distributed to all the commissioners a brief video and some material from that seminar. At some point, Nate and I think Captain Hall would like to make a brief presentation to all the commissioners. I think it's extremely important. I learned a ton of information that I just was not aware of in terms of running a jail and financial issues, staffing issues, liability issues. So I'd highly encourage next year, if it's offered, other commissioners go. It was a really, really good seminar. So at some point, we'd like to make a presentation to the commissioners so they can give me a better understanding. I think it'll give everyone else a better understanding, too.
It's a little scary, isn't it?
Very scary, actually.
Did they discuss the future trends in jail building?
They did, yes.
They did? Oh, that'd be interesting to find out then.
Yeah, it's...
We did.
yeah.
We did, 5 days in Colorado a few years ago.
I heard.
It's a major eye-opener.
Mhm.
And But when you go out there and you hear some of the stories that some of these other people have, we sat back and think, boy, are we in good shape, but then you start looking around and it's like, no, not really. Any other business? Thank you, Mike, for attending that. I was asked and I just simply couldn't get it in my schedule, so, I appreciate your attending on our behalf.
I'm really glad I went. It was a great seminar.
Seeing no other business, we stand adjourned at 8:18.
Okay.